Hello. Oh, what? I was gonna say, oh, you can't tell with the sunlight, but this says, "Hello, gorgeous." I bought that for me. Can you imagine? But of course, it's all about Barbara Streisand. Her opening lines, "A funny girl," were "Hello, gorgeous," and she is gorgeous, and she won an Academy Award. Well deserved. It was the first tie and the only tie in the history of the Academy Awards for Best Actress. I think it's the only tie, period. But anyway, I wanted to start my introduction to my review of Stephen Delaney's The Hours, my number two favorite film on my list, right after Ordinary People, which I did a review of. And it's based on a book by Michael Cunningham of the same title called The Hours, which I read. I think I read it after I saw the movie. Um, I don't have much memories of going to see it. I know I went to see it at the movies, and I remember really liking it a lot. But after multiple viewings, and maybe even after reading the book, I began to see things in it that were very reminiscent of what I look for in film and what I've noticed in a lot of my favorite films. There's either a central female character or it's a story of women. I go back to Ordinary People and I talk about Conrad being the central character, which he is, but Beth was sort of like the overpowering presence of the film. And then number two being The Hours, which is about three women. And then Persona, which I think is next, is about two women. And Cries and Whispers, both of those, Persona and Cries and Whispers, being about women. The Cries and Whispers has three women. One of my other favorite films of all time is Robert Altman's Three Women. So there's something very unusual about that, I think. And so that's where the Hours fits in the fact that it's an exploration of three women from three different time periods. Virginia Woolf in the 1920s uh, played. All right, I don't know. Sometimes adjectives fail me. Anyway, Nicole Kidman played Virginia Woolf. Just won an Academy Award. Best performance. One of the best performances ever captured on film. Meryl Streep plays Clarissa. I was going to say Dalloway, but Clarissa Vaughn. And she's in the year of the 21st century. And Laura Brown, played by Julianne Moore, is in the 1960s. So it's about three women who are from three different eras. And yet, one thing bridges them together, and that is Virginia Woolf's story, Mrs. Dalloway. And I never read the book. I have read some of Virginia Woolf's writings and some poetry, and I'm blown away by it. Uh, but the thing to remember about Mrs. Dalloway, the book, and how the film starts, really, is that the first sentence of her classic novel, Mrs. Dalloway, about Virginia Woolf, begins, Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. That's the opening line of the movie. I think not the opening line of the movie, but it's the central line of the movie that I think brings the characters together. And like I said, this is going to be a review that's going to have so much exploration, character-wise and theme-wise. But that line, Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself, is very central to the film. The only history I can give on that is that when Virginia Woolf wrote that line, it was kind of um, a revelation. I always want to use the word revelatory. I think that is a word because women didn't do anything for themselves. I mean, they played the housekeeper. I mean, housekeeper. They played the wife, the raising the kids and all that. So when she wrote that line, Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. It was like she was saying, you know, I am an independent woman capable of doing whatever it is that I choose to do. And that's what this film is so much about with these characters. Whether we agree with their choices or not, they take a stance. And my therapist and I have talked about this, and he brought up the fact that they all listen to their inner critic. And I disagree with Mark because I think that, and I'll explain that later on, but whether they chose to commit suicide or whether they chose to stay alive, um, I don't think they, I mean, I think they had an inner critic talking to them like we all do, but I think they made choices. And Virginia Woolf is really the character I think that I'm probably going to most use as an example of someone who made a choice. That was her choice to make. And whether that was her inner critic telling her to do it, you know, I don't think so. I think she made a choice. She didn't want to live with the mental illness that she had, and it was her life. And she had doctors attending to her, and there's a wonderful train scene. I'll probably spend a good time, maybe even just a separate video just talking about that because there's so much to this film. And I would love to say I'll go watch it again so I can, you know, kind of rehearse for my reviews, but I don't. That's not necessary since I've seen the film like so many times. I mean, I could recite it probably from beginning to end, and nobody wants that. So anyway, stay tuned. But I'm gonna call this part one of my review of The Hours by Stephen Delane, a brilliant director who also did The Reader with Kate Winslet, another one of my favorite actresses. And I'm gonna entitle it "Mrs. Dalloway Said She Would Buy the Flowers Herself" because I think that is how I want to start. So stay tuned and thank you and have a blessed day.